Hi YouTube! So got a Gibson, a real Gibson today. This is a Les Paul Junior double cut from 2019. Well, the serial number starts 19. Does that mean it might be a 2020 then? Because there was a section, a time when the Gibson said on the back of the headstock it would start, say, 19, and then below it would say 2020 model, because I think, you know, the idea was that you brought out the two that you obviously in January 2020 you want to have the guitars ready to ship, so you made them in 2019, even though it's a 20. Yeah, I'll just stop. I'll not bother going along that line. But yeah, so I had this in. My pal wanted me to fit a badass type bridge on it. In one of these, you know, the intonable ones, whereas the one you get on it is like the single wraparound, which has got like a leading edge on the top, so the intonation between all the strings is set, but you can, there's wee Allen bolts on the back, so you can slide the whole thing back and the whole thing forward, but in relation to each other, the intonation's set. I can understand why he wanted to do that, but if you're going to be using normal strings, it's totally fine. I think when you start, you know, I want it, you know, drop C sharp, it's like maybe then you'll have issues with intonation, but they got it right. It's pretty much a set thing. Yeah, so single P90. This looks odd to me. See the way it kind of gets square here? Looks odd. Probably exactly like they were in the 50s, but it kind of looks like something I've made. I was actually looking at my I'll put it through next door, my Ibanez Roadster bass that I had to make a scratch plate for, and there's a couple of bits which kind of look a wee bit like that, but it just kind of looks like, is that meant to be square like that? Small thing. Volume and a tone, as I said, wraparound bridge, single P90. Mahogany body, set neck. I've always liked the look of these guitars. I know it's a Les Paul. It says Les Paul on the headstock, so I'm onto plums thinking that I'm going to say that it's not a Les Paul, but I don't think it's a Les Paul. It's not. It doesn't have the Les Paul thing I don't like, which is the funny angled neck and the fact it weighs a ton and the arch top. It's even though it is technically a Les Paul. Yeah, so the reason I didn't fit the intonable bridge is the same problem I had with I successfully made a Tony Iommi type guitar, like the Monkey guitar, out of a vintage SG, and I put one of these bridges on, and the problem is they are just too high. They're too thick that way. Like, annoyingly, I've actually got a real badass one sitting somewhere that I was going to put, but you just can't get it low enough. And it's a set neck. You know, if it'd been a bolt-on neck, I much prefer bolt-on necks. I think I'm going. I've said it before that I think I prefer bolt-on necks, but I think the more as time goes past, the more I prefer bolt-on necks, because then you can just change, you can just shim the neck and then put whatever bridge you want on. Whereas when it's a set neck, you're stuck. As I said, so I checked the intonation, and I've set the intonation, and it's totally fine for normal tuning, normal strings. I don't know. I didn't even change the strings on it. I think these are 10s. I think. Yeah, 10s. Yeah, so this needed basically the main problem with this was I needed the truss rod done more than anything else. The truss rod hadn't been connected up. With a lot of Gibson, one of my beefs with Gibsons, but basically the main beef for Gibson is the price of them. They're really, really expensive. If this was 500 quid, oh, amazing, but they're not. I think they're about £1,000. It's like it's kind of twice what it should be, sort of thing. I mean, it's really good. It's obviously it's a great P90. It's stuff like that, but it's just kind of got that a slight not being finished thing going on about it. The fret ends are not super smooth. They're not. They don't cut you, but it's like you've really done a wee bit more on them. And things like the setup. I mean, that truss bolt. You know, it's like it was a couple of turns before it even engaged, so it's never been touched. You know, it's like just get it out of the factory quickly, get it out. So don't spend any time on it. I just wish I assume if you buy the custom shop one that looks the same but it's £2,500, they've probably done that, you know. But just for the cheapy £1,000 one, they don't bother. Well, obviously you can sort it yourself. The annoying thing about Gibson truss rods is you need the special these things. You need a proper Popeye's pipe to adjust these bolts. It's not an Allen key, and it's annoying. I've never seen them since because I've recommended them to folks. Like, oh, I've got this. This is my truss rod. Don't try and use needle nose pliers or a socket set because you'll mash it up. Just invest in the correct thing. I suppose the Gibson one's probably a bog standard, but I got there was 4 different sizes on the, I don't know, 5-10 years ago on eBay. There was 4 different sizes of these things, and I think they were £6-7 each, something like that, including postage. Or you could get the whole set for like £12. So I bought the whole set. So I've got a truss rod. I can adjust it. But I haven't since then. I haven't seen anyone selling the sets. So it's like, oh, do I buy the 8mm one or the 10mm one? It's like you're going to end up having to buy both of them, aren't you, to make sure which one fits? Although I'd imagine because it's Gibson, it'll be 8 3/4/16 or something. So actually, my pal Mo was telling me that actually working in inches actually makes sense when you're trying to put things in half. It's easier, which I don't really understand. I said it made sense. He was like, oh, so you got like 8 inches and then 4 inches and then 2 inches and then an inch and then, you know, it's like it divides up easily, but still, if someone says, oh, what's your action at? It's like, you know, it's 5/16 and an 1/8, and you're just like, what? 3mm, all right. Bloody Europeans, eh? Yeah, so the truss rod needed done. A wee bit of a, it's fine. Yeah, I've got the action down low, but it's as low as it goes. Like the bridge won't go any lower. I would much rather have the ability to go too low and then come up a wee bit, rather than decking it to get a good action. I mean, it's like it's almost to the point of why make this thing adjustable? Because why? I suppose maybe for slide, but I would just much rather it was. I don't know how you do that. Do you maybe manufacture a slightly shallower bridge, or you put a slight back angle in the neck or something? But again, probably originally in the 50s when this came out. I loved the idea of the original ones of these because, which to be honest, the Japanese in the 80s did one of the reasons like them. Don't do that anymore. But the idea was that they would make a guitar that was like a Les Paul, or like their expensive model, but cheaper. So it would have, back in those days, a pickup made a significant difference to the price of the guitar. It doesn't make any difference putting 2 pickups under 1 pickup in, you know. Really, it's like not noticeably, not on an £800 or £900 guitar. It's like, you know, it's like what, an extra tenner to put in it. You know, it's nothing. But so the plan was they would make it cheaper, much less fancy. So you get no bindings, you don't have the maple cap, all that stuff. You just got 1 pickup. Very simple, just dots instead of inlays, all this stuff. But they would make it to the same quality level as the expensive ones, and the idea was that people would buy the junior when they're, you know, maybe not when they're starting out, but, you know, they're in their first band, and then once they were ready for another guitar, they would go, oh, I really love the junior, I'll buy a real Les Paul. You know, this thing about getting customers to come back, whereas these days, or for the last, you know, it's basically buy this, got your money, ha ha ha, run away. They're not interested. They're not interested in you buying another guitar. You'll buy one if you want anyway, because it's a Gibson, so you'll buy another one anyway. And it's like, it's not just Gibson, Fender. So many companies do that. They're not really interested in getting a return customer. So just get the money now. Get the money in the bank. There we go. That's fine. Right. Let's sell someone else one. Didn't have that returning customers. It's not aesthetic idea. Whereas that is exactly what the Japanese guitars tend to be, like that Roadster I've got there. There is one that cost £1,000 at the time, and that cost like 200, and that's built the same. It's just it doesn't have as much fancy stuff on it. It's got cheaper pickups. It's not made of the fanciest wood, but the build quality is the same, so it's like as good. Whereas that's not how modern guitars go. You know, it's like, we'll just build it as quickly as possible as we can to make it cheaper, and that's when you get your guitars that are like kind of, they've got all the bling on them and all the abalone and stuff like that, and it's like 300 quid, and you're like, I would much rather, instead of spending all the extra money putting binding on and all that stuff, they just spent that extra time on putting the guitar together well, lining stuff up, finishing the frets, all that sort of stuff. So enough 10 minutes of ranting. I actually tried to do a video of this last week, and I ended up trying to do it about 3 times. I just couldn't play. Sometimes you just, I don't know, just not in the mood or not playing well. So I'd be interested to see if it's still not, because I mean, maybe that's partly to do with, because I really do like this guitar and I think it should sound amazing. So if it doesn't sound amazing when I'm playing it, I'm doing something wrong. So P90, I was going to say P90s, but just P90. So this is the bridge pickup. I'm playing to the orange, which isn't in the studio the other day. So orange clean channel. And as I've been going on about recently, like having one pickup, it makes you use the volume control and the tone control a bit, because it's the only option you've got for sound. So, and even with some of the guitars, oh no, that one of them's only got a volume, so you just end up learning how to play. Makes a difference whether you strum here or here. Or you want a jangler sound, play above the pickup. Bassier. And I suppose if you want neck pickup, you can turn the tone completely down. Not quite as much as that. There. Dirty. Full whack. Yeah, so I think this is, well, maybe it was actually a bit of an answer to the Telecaster sort of thing, because obviously this came out a little bit later than the Les Paul. I think 55, 56, maybe 58, something. Then about then, and by that point the Telecaster had taken off, because it's what, 52 or something like that. So it's kind of like a Gibson Telecaster, really. It's got that. Maybe part of that's just the fact it doesn't have the chamfer on the top here, which kind of signifies a Telecaster. Normally you get like a sort of, on a Strat you get the carved away bit there. So it feels chunkier, even with the same thickness. And maybe just see if you just kind of covered up this bit. Kind of is a Tele, isn't it? Really? Yeah, but it's got that sort of. You'll notice if you've got a Tele, it's kind of got a workman-like thing going on about it. It's like no bullshit, no fancy crap. It's like no, it's just for rock. Just it's a player's guitar. I mean, I love it. It's great. This is also one of the ones that came in TV yellow. Got a big thing for yellow guitars, so the yellow one. I quite like one of them. It's just unfortunate. You get a lot of. In fact, I've even got one sitting here. A lot of sort of Japanese from the 70s Gibson copies, and they're always, well, not always, but they're always a black Les Paul custom, and it's like, I suppose once you've got the plans, that's the one you build. Why would you copy the cheaper one? when you can copy the most expensive one for the same price sort of thing. So if you got like a few more, I mean, I think they do exist, but they're not very common, like this, but made by, or made in Japan, Arbiter or Rose Morris or something, I'd be quite happy to go for one. I'd rather have a bolt-on neck one if it was at all possible. I think it just seems to resonate better. And yes, I do have plenty of set necks. I've got through necks and stuff like that, but bolt-on neck, they just seem a bit more alive. I think there's something about, okay, being a one piece of wood, it vibrates well, but I mean, it is bolted on with 4 bolts, really strong, and you can tighten it up and all that stuff. So makes it a wee bit springier. But I mean, this is smashing. Actually, there's a vintage model. I had a shot of one. One of the Les Pauls I like. It was it wasn't the shape. It was the other Les Paul Junior, the one that's just more Les Paul shaped. It doesn't have the double cutaway. A vintage one with P90s, and it was yellow, and I really quite like that. That's a good guitar. I think they do one like this as well. There's actually someone selling a Harley Benton one on Facebook Marketplace just now for like 110 quid or something, and it's like, I've got a bad thing about Harley Benton after that one Scott got, and it's like purely just, when you get one that's really bad, you start realising that you're never really going to get one that's really good. You're going to get one that's not as bad as that one. That was, I think, was a one-off, just atrocious neck, didn't fit, 26 faults, major faults on it, and it's like that major faults. There's no major faults on this. Minor gripes being, they could probably have done the edges of the frets a bit better, and then set it up. And again, I was complaining about the bridge being a bit. I wish it was either the bridge was thinner so you could go too low. But I mean, when does it become? It's like, oh, that's not like a real Gibson. They've just copied the 50s one. It's the same thing with the volute at the back of the neck that isn't on this. If you put if you make that bit, that's the bit that breaks. So if you can kind of extend it to have one that's got a volute. That probably does it? No, this isn't. Yeah, the volute in the back of the neck there. So it's got like a lumpy bit. So the neck won't break there. So that's kind of a design fault of all Gibson guitars, and they did actually put the volute on, and in the 80s or the 90s, and everyone went mental. It's not a real Gibson, it's got a volute on it, you can't have that. And it's like, but we'll stop the headstock snapping. No, vintage spec, make it the same as it was in 58. Okay, we'll make it so that when you drop it, the head snaps off. Yep, that's better, yes. Where does it become, how are you going to improve a guitar? It's like, no, we don't want to. I just want a 1954 Stratocaster. I don't want anything else on it. I mean, even stuck with the Stratocaster, it was like, I think it was the late 70s when they put a 5-way switch in instead of a 3-way switch. And it's like, you're right. So you only had 3 sounds instead of 5, and it's basically just a case of a slightly different switch. And Hendrix was, folk would wedge it with a matchstick and stuff between the positions, because the position's still there, it's just the switch doesn't sit there. It's like, no, it's got to be vintage, right? I think I've probably talked enough. 20 minutes. Oh, I know what the problem with that is. Distortion channel in the amp, it means I can't have clean on the loop pedal and then put the rat pedal over. It does. It's much more lively than a Les Paul. I know it's got P90s in it, but I think there's much more, even when it's not plugged in, it's an awful lot more lively and more airy and resonant than a standard Les Paul is, or Les Paul standard is. Partly maybe because it's got this, you can feel the grain through the finish sort of stuff, which just by coincidence is actually much cheaper to make by only giving it a quick paint, not polishing it. Oh, yeah, but I mean, I think it does actually give it a bit more ringiness, and I think the hardtail, the wrap over bridge has something to do with that, because I've got a few guitars that I've got the wrap over, and it does seem to be more instantaneous and more in your face having that than having the standard Tunematic, which none of the guitars on the wall have. You know what I mean? It's like you get a bridge and then you get a tailpiece. This is both in one. I've actually worked out what the problem with those is. You've got to have a good wood body to take them, because if you think about it, this the motions that are applying to this are this, like, oh! So it's basically the strings are trying to lift and rotate these bolts out the body, whereas if you've got the Tunematic, the actual bridge part, it's all the pressure's going straight down on it, and on the tailpiece part, all the pressure is just horizontal, whereas in this one it's a twisting, trying to pull it off. So you've got to have if you make it out of crap wood, you have problems with that. Maybe not the best solution, but I love it. It's great. Again, beef with this is very expensive for what they are. Even I think you'll find it if you go to like the Epiphone ones. I think, I don't see it. It's like the way it goes. My pal's got in fact, just Cameron up the road's got a white. As his is that, you know, the Les Paul shaped as opposed to being the double cut shaped, and I think it's a single humbucker that's in it, and it might even be, I don't know whether it's a wrap over bridge or not, but you know, simpler idea. And it's actually more expensive to get the single pickup one than it is to get the same guitar with two pickups, because they've maybe got to retool to only put one in. Mind you, you would think, I wonder if there is actually, I could have had a look, and below here there might be enough room. It might have been routed out for another one, I don't know. I assume you could probably get this in two, but something about the one. And that's where we're getting down to the, in fact, it's also got, I quite like the plastic buttons on the end of the Gibson Deluxe, the Clussen type tuners, but I quite like the plastic buttons. It's just cool. Also, it sounds silly, but something like that might make a bit of a difference to the balance, because you can see the balance is perfect on it. If you put Grovers on this, heavy tuners, it's not just the weight of the tuners, it's the fact that they're on the end of this fulcrum this long. You know, remember that at school when you had, like, you know, the lever thing, lever if you're an American, where it's like, you know, you've got you're holding your lever and you put a weight on there. It's like, that's fine, but you put a weight on there, the same weight, it's multiplied by the length. So if you put any weight on the headstock of your guitar, it's not just the actual weight. You know, it doesn't make any difference to the overall weight of the guitar, really, putting heavier tuners on, but having them on the end of this big lever does. And I've seen that with SGs before. That's why, you know, these super lightweight tuners, which, and they're fine. Like, I don't mean these ones are good quality ones, but the actual concept of them is fine, bit basic. Whereas once you start putting locking units on, or Grovers, you know, big chunky ones, and even I was saying there, even like something like the plastic things, it probably saves a couple of grams, them being plastic rather than being metal, which is a couple of grams times a meter lighter on the headstock, therefore less neck dive. But I've seen that before. Epiphone did an SG. My pal had one actually. Jerry, I remember I was putting push pull pots in it, and then there was a wee bag, a wee velvet tie bag. And I was like, it's quite heavy. What? And it was ball bearings. So basically, his idea, which I think did, to be honest, sort of work, was in the control cavity, he'd put ball bearings in it, which put a bit more weight here, which kind of sorted out a little bit of the neck heaviness. It helped. It did genuinely help. Not an awful lot, but it did help. And it has like an Epiphone, it had Grovers on it, and it's like, that's kind of the difference. I actually did the same thing with my West Tone Clipper. I had cheap ass tuners on it. I think they're actually the ones I ended up putting in the Shocking Bird. And the guitar was great, and then I ended up getting a hold of a guitar that had Grovers on it, like funny coloured Grovers. They were sort of mirrored chrome. No, not mirrored, like a sort of... Sorry, edit again. Last thing I said was satin finish. I was talking about the tuners that I put on a West Tone Telecaster Clipper, and it's not neck heavy now, but something went from the guitar. Even though I put much better Grover tuners on it, it didn't quite feel just as right. I think maybe just a slight touch of, whereas before it was perfectly balanced with the cheapy tuners on it, and I put the better ones on, and it lost something. But a totally not worthy edit, because that's basically, I'd already finished talking about this guitar. 2019 Les Paul Junior Double Cut TC. I don't even know if they still make it. Was that when did Gibson get under new ownership? I don't know whether this is pre or post or new. It was before lockdown, so it was. This is the new Gibson, when they did not try and simplify the range, so that you only had like 2 or 3 Les Pauls. Well, not including the juniors and stuff. Rather than having 10 different models, there was like you just had the studio, the standard, and then obviously you get the custom shop at the top, sort of thing. Rather than it being, oh, there's all these ones in the middle. But yeah, so. And I think, actually, to be honest, one of my sort of slight issues with this is I don't really know if there's any bands or any players that I pure love that play one of these. I know Leslie West at a Mountain did. I used to be quite into Mountain. I can't really remember what any of their songs go like. They weren't really super catchy. I think Steve Barrett used one as well, but not for the Small Faces, which is when I like them. So it's not, give me an SG and I'm immediately pure, haha, I had an SG last week or something. Oh, sorry, AC/DC and the Beatles and all these things jump to an end. Whereas this is like, you can play anything on anything, but it's just like your initial image for this is to go, oh, I'll play... it doesn't scream to me, oh, go on, play a Sabbath riff. I mean, obviously it's actually quite close to Sabbath riff. And getting onto that, I'll end with the one expensive guitar I think I would probably go for out of all guitars. I'm saying I'm never going to spend thousands of pounds on a guitar ever, no matter how much money I've got. The late 60s SG shaped one of these. Mike Oldfield's got one. Probably the 2 pickup one though. A bit like it. In fact, it's Tony Iommi's Monkey ones like that, and they're not actually that expensive to buy like an original 69, 68 one. They're like £1,500, £2,000, which is really expensive, but cheaper than buying a new Gibson Les Paul. You're like, well, I'll have one that's 60 years old, please. Is my way of looking at it. I do still quite fancy. No, I've got my Epiphone one's got P90s in it. I still quite fancy an SG with P90s in it at some point. I think probably over one of these, just because the SG's got so much. It looks more evil, basically. Rock on. Sorry about that edit. That was really annoying. Catch you later.